And have you walked out without using one of these Dyson hand dryers with a tap in the middle? Because they're great when they're used with the right sink. If they're used with the wrong sink, the hand dryer instantly blows all that soapy water all over you. So do you design for men and women? Both at the same time? Are they the right users to design for? Probably not, because the users with the most needs are the ones that you really need to start with. So disabled users, people with prams, extra children, people who need a lock-up bag and a lockdown loan, the people who need that extra time. Because if those people are accommodated for, if those people are designed for first, everybody else can use those facilities. Everybody else gets the best of both worlds. And we're all worthy of that. We're all worthy of better design. So the point of why I'm here and talking about this is I'm picking problems for my self-development in design, but to also get some solutions out there. Is I'm looking for worthy issues. And this is what I'm doing. I'm setting up a blog, which is my portfolio. It's a task for myself to get things out, to get options out there and other solutions, and to collaborate. If anyone has a problem and they want to do some work on it, come and see me, and we'll do it and get it up and see if we can find the right solution to these issues.
Thanks for that, Steve. Although I think if your poo is green, you should probably see a doctor. Let's slide this up. Right, our next speaker is going to tell us, we're a techie talk for once. Like, Ignite's supposed to be, like everywhere else in the world, Ignite is kind of a tech format, basically. And because we've got loads of really awesome, interesting, different sorts of people in Liverpool, we've always had like awesome, interesting, different talks. But this one's one that's a bit techie, I presume, from the title, although I haven't seen the slides. If we welcome to the stage Doug Arnold, who's going to tell us about modelling software systems.
Hello. Okay, so it was going to be about modelling software systems and conveying the abstract. I looked into this, and then I have a twist at the end, which I'll make you aware of, which is a cautionary tale in the hype in technology. So we're going to look at modelling, and what is a model? When René Magritte said, "This is not a pipe," he was creating a model. It's not a pipe. The thing about a model is it isn't the real world object which we're looking at. It has mostly the aesthetics of a model, but it doesn't give you any function, you can't use it. And the first thing in modelling is abstraction. The idea that we just convey the simple amount of information that a user needs to convey. In a schematic, for example, of this Arduino, we don't need to know the colours of the board, where it sits, what size it is, we just need to know the connections. And then standardization is the second thing of modelling. By using the same symbols in a schematic, we can standardize the way that we communicate ideas of a physical nature. Here we've got a boss and engineer. So why would we want to model software? Well, we don't create software for the users. It's an awkward thing where developers throw over the wall of confusion the software they develop, and it isn't always the best thing. It can be much better quality if we model and catch faults early. So how would we model software? Coding is already an abstraction of sorts of the microprocessor. So code already is an abstraction and is a model of what's going on the microprocessor. But in the late 90s, the OMG, oh my God, they came in, the object management group. They're kind of like keepers of standards in technology. I like to think of it as the Templar in Indiana Jones' Last Crusade. And they don't produce any tools, but they give rules to other tools that can do it. So they created the unified modelling language. Lots of different languages came together and agreed on a standard with many, many different kind of symbols and many diagrams, because software is complicated. So in UML, good place to start, use case diagram. Identify the actors, the users of your system. Identify the things that they need to access within that system and make that model. Then you've got the activity diagram, which is just a simple flowchart, which I'm sure many of you are aware of. But that's not all, we need to get a bit more techy. So they looked at object-oriented programming. A great idea. Objects of small bits of code rather than a big, massive bit of code, and different users and different programmers in different parts of the world can create different objects, each with their own properties and functions. So a cat has feet, and it has a function which it can meow, and they created class diagrams. So here we have an animal as a class, and then different things like a spider, cat, and fish can inherit the properties of an animal. They all walk, they all eat, but each of them have their own properties. Oh dear, software. The objects need sequences, so you need sequence diagrams with all of these different elements within them. This one is actually labelled, but engineers are going to need to know timing diagrams as well. High-speed elements of microprocessor systems require lots of different timings to get everything right. So if you're going to model a system, you need all of these different diagrams to explain the software, because it is abstract, it is complicated. In fact, UML is so great that it can be used to show the diagrams. We've got inheritance here, a diagram at the top, we've got behavior diagrams and structure diagrams. They're a type of diagram. And UML users in the mid-2000s gave this lovely idea of how it's all going to work. They said that it would help with outsourcing. You don't need to write software here. We will ship it out to India, and you just write the models. Also, the holy grail, what was really sold, you can generate code. Then you can modify it, and then put it back into the model. How did it work out in the end? Well, software engineers and managers don't get on sometimes, especially when managers are trying to enforce their ideas, and software engineers just ended up writing lots of useless diagrams. This is what all of the forums these days say. And the problem was hype and implementation. It reached a massive hype in the mid-2000s, and systems engineering and model-based engineering. NASA actually used a form of UML for massive projects like satellites that you can't change once they're launched, and you need that quality. So lessons: be skeptical about technology and processes. See if it fits your needs. And make sure you understand what you're taking on, because just by using a tool that industry uses doesn't mean you'll be successful. You need to put in the effort to reap the benefits. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Doug. I hope you're all appreciating Dan's little kind of musical bits at the end. Whilst he talks on, he's got 5 minutes to frantically search around and find some song that's going to have like a hook to kind of tie in with what's being talked about. Just an excellent job with it all. So, our next speaker is Herb Kim, and we heard about the design of toilets earlier, and now we're going to a different bit of the bathroom. But I don't think we're talking about design, I'm not sure, but we're going to hear about ice baths.
Just before we begin, as many of you know, I organize a lot of events, so I have a massive appreciation for the amount of work that goes into a talk. So we give a round of applause to all the speakers before me. And a special bonus round of applause for Bailey Abbott for the amazing story. Okay, so let's begin. Great. Right, so as the talk title might suggest, we'll be talking about ice baths eventually. I'm Herb Kim, as I mentioned, probably best known locally for running an event called TEDx Liverpool, which we ran just last June. I'll be talking about another TEDx, I think, during the break. So I was born in Brooklyn, 1967, so I'm 51 years old. And my early life was really I suppose, I was known for being very hardy. I very rarely got ill. I had a high capacity for endurance. And that all changed when I turned 40, where the evidence of definite physical decline began, and I started to get sick a lot more, catching colds 4 or 5 times a year, and I would be on planes a fair amount, visiting my parents and going to conferences in America and things like that. Every single time I was getting off the plane, I was caught a cold, and I had massive jet lag. So typically, a day for every 2 days I was there, it would take me to recover. So in January 2017, a friend of mine from Manchester, Doug Ward, tweeted the link about how to never get sick again. So talk about clickbait for someone. I was sick in January, and the video, I clicked it and I groaned. It was about this guy named Wim Hof, who I'd heard about before. He is a kind of evangelist for cold showers and ice baths, and when I heard about it in the past, I just immediately shut off and said, this is not for me. I have no interest in whatever you got to say. The method is involved. What it involves is meditation is one aspect, and I'm not going to talk about that because there's enough out there to talk about meditation. Secondly is about holding your breath. You basically breathe in, you hyperventilate with 30 quick breaths, you blow it out, and then you hold that breath for as long as you can. So it was a Friday night, early January. I had about a half bottle of wine, and I said, oh, and for extra points, you can do push-ups while you're holding your breath. So I did this breath holding thing, I did push-ups, and I was able to do it for 90 seconds. So I was like really curious now. And the next step is to go ahead and entertain the idea of cold showers and ice baths as a way of life. But you don't. The first step isn't to go ahead and jump into an ice bath. You start slow. Like if you were running a marathon, eventually you might start by walking around the block, depending on just what your level of fitness is. You start with a regular warm shower, and then maybe for the last 30 seconds, you put lukewarm water on your legs, and then you build up from there. And by March of that year, I was able to do a cold shower for up to 20 minutes in a single go. Well, actually, so I was broken up into 2 cold showers of 10 minutes each. So my next step, this is now April, I was in Orlando, and I did my very first ice bath. That was a picture of the ice bath. Actually, the first one was a failed experiment because there wasn't enough ice in it. So the second one took about 40 pounds. This is about 40 pounds. This is in New Hampshire now, of ice for it to really have an impact. So 2 years later, all of 2017, I took 3 warm showers, one on my birthday, one at Christmas, and one because I was deeply hungover. 2018, 0 warm showers this year. And in 2019, I'm not dumb, I'm going to try an experiment to integrate warm showers back into my life, which I do miss. I have had a half day of sickness in that entire span of time. Weirdly, because it's totally unexpected to me, I no longer get jet lag, which is the freakiest, unexpected impact of this. You won't be surprised my gas bills have plummeted. This was the September gas bill was $5.21. It's gone a little bit more. The November one was about 15 pounds. And just satisfied I could do it at all. I really was, I'm not like a brave person at all. And so to kind of close on this, it's like, why might this be working? And if you think about it, for the vast majority of human existence, 200,000 years, and if you think about our predecessors 2 million years, we have not had hot water on tap. We have not had warm houses that are constantly at around 24 degrees, which today, if you want to, you can have a 24-degree existence 24 hours a day. And could we, are we missing something by not actually being exposed to the cold more often? And if you think about this, is that there's about 100,000 miles or something like that of capillaries and veins. And sure, if you go running or do some weightlifting, whatever it might be, you can exercise the major arteries and veins, but not these little capillaries and the things that would react. I mean, obviously, you go into the cold, your skin reacts, and are we not exercising those minor vessels and veins and that's perhaps what's leading us to be able to get sick more often, and so on and so forth. So, having been impressed by my cold shower experiment, this year I've started taking on fasting. So I've done up to 90 hours, but that is for another talk. So thank you for your time and for listening.
Thank you very much for that, Herb. Yeah, like, interesting. At the start of that talk, I was not thinking that by the end of it I'd be like, oh, okay, I see, that's interesting. Like, I was just like, ice baths, no, that sounds really bad. But, that was, yeah, interesting. So this brings us to the last talk of the first half. And he says, looking down at his notes to see what it is, it's Craig Kay, and he's going to be telling us about how we're all miracles. So if you can welcome to the stage, Craig Kay.
Feels more rock and roll. Hello. Who thought I was going to be a priest when it said miracle? I'm not. So I'm a psychologist by trade and behaviouralist, and what I'm going to do is talk about you. So I'm going to talk about you from a macro scale, really much out there, to a micro scale, just going to drill down exactly on who you are. How you're looking at me is through light, a photon that travels at 299,792 kilometres per second. If you think about that, the next galaxy down is the Andromeda galaxy. If they had a telescope big enough to look at Earth, they'd be looking at dinosaurs walking the Earth. The Earth was created 6.5 billion years, began to form 6.5 billion years ago, situated between the Sun and Jupiter, with the first bacteria only 3 billion years ago. Why am I telling you that? Well, when you think about a rainbow, the beautiful thing about rainbows is when you look at raindrops, if I look at them from here and I look at them from where you are, they look completely different based on where we are. Truly unique. Two other things that are truly unique. Snowflake, which has the fingerprint kind of like diagram, knows who are alike, and DNA. So if we drill down on DNA, that means you. Why am I telling you that? Why am I doing a fast forward walk through the history of life over a short period of time? Well, the truth is you. So over a short period of time in our existence, you're so complex, you're so brilliant from where you are and how you've been, that every one of us is completely dissimilar. We think about your likes and your dislikes, your physical and mental health, socio-economic statuses, biases that we've picked up, but we'll come back to that probably in around 60 seconds time. First, let's talk about your mum and dad. There was a 1 in 20,000 chance that they'd meet. That's because an average person meets 10,000 people prior to the age of 32 years old. That means that 1 in 10 chance of them being able to speak to each other, an additional 1 in 10 chance that they'll go on a date, an original 1 in 10 chance that they'll have a second date, a 50% chance they'll develop a long-term relationship, and a 1 in 2,000 chance that they'll develop offspring. You. How good is your maths then? So I've went through a lot of statistics in terms of dinosaurs, rainbows, your mum and dad's getting to know you phase. And so far, if you can work that out, that's a 1 in 40 million chance of you sitting here now. But let's go again. A female production system utilises 100,000 eggs. A male fertilisation is 4 trillion sperm. That means 1 in 40 trillion. Now if we repeat that 150,000 times, would see your nan and your granddad get together, which is 1 in 40 trillion again, and again, and again, all the way through to Neanderthal. So if we kind of think of the scale of you, imagine 1 trillion people throw, 2 million people throwing a dice with 2 trillion sides on it. The chances of them all getting the same number is 55 bloody loads. So now, when you think about the history of you, everything we've looked at, that means that the chance of you sitting here watching this presentation is 1 in 10 times 2 trillion. Why am I telling you that? Well, I'm telling you that because if you look at any kind of scientific method or behavioural method, the chance of you in existence is minimal and it wouldn't be endured, it wouldn't be looked at in detail, it'd be drawn for the bin. Sprinkle on top of that your psychological background, your learned behaviours, autism, mental health, your biological upbringing, how we are as people. That includes neurology, our social settings, so our jobs, our livelihoods, and then you think of the horrible side of the coin, which is our biggest selling newspaper in the UK, which is the Daily Mail, and how that refers to people. Every person's an absolute miracle. So to have headlines like this fills me with sadness. When I think about social media, I think how hard it must have been to go through school now. You think about it then, quite difficult. You think about it now, there is no turn off from when you leave school. Why am I telling you that? Because when you leave the house any day, and you make sure I don't fall off, when you leave the house every day and you look in the mirror and you've got these external influences telling you that you are amazing, statistically, you absolutely are. The chance that you're sitting here watching this is a miracle from a psychologist's point of view. So, to conclude, thank you everyone at Ignite. There's a picture of Bill Murray, because you're awesome. Yeah. You can follow me and my antics on @the on Twitter. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Craig. So, that brings us to the end of the first half. Hope you've all enjoyed it so far. There's lots of things about how everyone's different. So it gives you something to do for the interval. So find somebody you've not spoken to before, find out how you're different from them. Get yourselves a drink, have a toilet break, because we all need them. And we'll see you back in 20 minutes to start the second half. And if you've got any 1-minute pitches, come and find me or Mandy, let us know. See you in 20 minutes.
Fine, thank you. How are you? Yeah. So, I suppose we're looking to turn up tomorrow. Will you run tomorrow or not? Well, I suppose with your general theme of learning new stuff and things like that, you should just come with us. So the out of hours, are you still doing the same thing then? Oh, great. So what was wrong with Crusader then? Okay, so have you haven't even seen the new patient then? He's lovely.
so if you want to get your drinks and your snacks and your popcorn and settle in for part 2. bonus 1-minute pitches. So if I can ask the people who want to pitch if they'd like to queue up behind the projector, and then I can call you out to do your pitch. Okay, so first up we've got Hussein, who's talking about Side Quest.
Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, what a load of, I'm sure we can all agree that we all need genuine human connection. I'm in the middle of setting up a social enterprise that aims to make this more possible than ever. A fun and engaging social hub that connects people through team building exercises, games and community projects run by members to build on their work experience whilst working on their interpersonal skills such as confidence and active listening and making new friends through learning to be more socially mindful, ultimately to enable social change through human connection, providing a much needed platform for people to have their voices heard, because ironically it can often appear that social networks available to us can make us sometimes feel further away from each other, with anonymity often feeling discrimination and feelings of isolation. We aim to create engaging, meaningful and safe environments where people can connect with each other face to face, right in the middle of the high street. I'm having a pre-launch event on Thursday. You can find it on Eventbrite. It's called Side Quest, and thank you.
Thank you. Next up we've got Jim Noakes, who's going to be talking to you about Awesome Liverpool.
Thank you. Who likes £500? I love £500, don't we? But Awesome Liverpool gives away £500 every month. We give it away, but we say you need to have 4 things for your proposal that comes forward, and I always forget them, so I'm going to read them. So you need to have a budget. You need to know how you're going to spend the £500. But we don't kind of hold you to too much. As soon as you get that £500, it's yours to spend it on your project. You need to solve a problem. Now, that can be difficult for some people. Like, what kind of problems am I going to solve? Well, Awesome started in the States. And the first ever money it gave away in Boston was money to some people to build the world's biggest hammock. And that solved the problem they didn't realise that they had. And that was they needed a massive hammock. So they got money and they were able to build it. So it's fantastic. It needs to be local. But considering the only other one in the UK of the Awesome Foundation is based in Glasgow, basically local is kind of England, Wales. And that's the kind of level that we're looking at. And then finally, it's got to bring joy. And that's kind of quite subjective for the trustees to decide on, but it's often the kind of key thing that really makes us decide every month on what we're going to invest in. What kind of things have we invested in? I hear you shout. I didn't. We gave 500 kids? No, we didn't. Oh, we did. Oh, we've been out of this. Child traffickers, that's terrible. No, we gave £500 to Wigsy, which was a knitting initiative that made hats for kids with cancer. Actually, you're not laughing now, to give money to kids with cancer. We gave up £500 just recently to people who were putting on a Christmas party for bereaved children. But it's not all the joyous things. We gave £500 to a bunch of kids who were developing a device to crowdsource all the dropped curbs in Liverpool, so they could tell you the best route around the city. Plasticine hearts. There's an artist who is making a plasticine version of every mammal heart, from a shrew all the way up to a blue whale. And she wanted £500 to do that, and we gave her that. Did kind of ask her what you're going to spend on. She said, well, there's a fair bit of storage. So that's what she's going to be spending it on. And then Dirty Beach Club, which didn't turn out to be the DVD lending library I was expecting. But it was an initiative to clean up some of the beaches in Merseyside. And actually, some of the people you're going to be seeing later on, Coffin Club, we gave it to them. So it's a whole range of different things we're going to give it to, and I'm going to run off now. But look for us, awesomeliverpool.com. Thank you.
Thank you. And I am an awesome, what's the word? Beneficiary. So I can recommend it's good fun. And now we have Zarino, who's going to talk about Christmas decorations in November.
Hello, Zarino and Jackie. Hello, Jackie. We haven't planned this at all, and in fact, I'm going to forget it all, so I've written it down too. What should we say?
We're having a special event where you can design your own Christmas decorations, and it'll be really good fun. It's on the 9th of December, and we'll have mince pies and wine, and it'll just be really relaxing and stuff, and just get you in the mood for Christmas.
The background is we're at Does Liverpool, which is like a makerspace thing that lots of people will know, and funnily enough, it's in the Tapestry building, which is run by like this contingent over here. So yeah, come along, it'll be fun, and we can make some, we're going to be doing laser cutting and sublimation printing and all sorts of stuff. You get to use Gerald, our gigantic, gentle giant laser cutter. And it's only £15. What was that, Jackie? It's £15!
For at least four tree ornaments.
At least 4 tree ornaments, and mince pies, and mulled wine. Non-alcoholic drinks will also be available. And there's parking nearby if you're driving and having the non-alcoholic drinks. And I also need to, as part of the social contract, I need to get a photo of us presenting this to all of you. So put your best Christmassy faces on. Imagine you've just had an amazing workshop making 4 beautiful tree ornaments for what was that, £15? Just search for Does Liverpool Makes Christmas Ornaments Eventbrite, and just think about that. Pull the face of somebody who's really satisfied with those Christmas decorations you've just made, and that way round. 3, 2, 1. Fantastic, thank you. And it was on the 9th of December. 9th of December. £15, Jackie. Only £15.
Wow, the 9th of December, okay. And our final 1-minute pitch is for Liverpool's own Iceman, Mr. Herb Kim.
The Iceman cometh.
I'm back. As I mentioned, my day job these days is running a variety of conferences and events across the north, Liverpool, Manchester, and Newcastle. Now, one of the interesting things is that Ignite Liverpool started in 2009, and that was the same year that we started doing the 10X events in Liverpool and Manchester as well as Newcastle. And what's been amazing to me, I don't know how many people have been coming since the early days, but Adrian has, yes, that's one person. Back in the early days, there would sometimes be like around 20 people, which was fine for the time. It was the early days, and so it's been great to see this event grow so much. So first off, a round of applause to the organizers of Ignite Liverpool for being so great. And I'm sure there are others. You can speak later. Right. And I think one of the, I mean, you can tell me, but I mean, one of the great things about an event like this is that it brings together a group of curious, creative, innovative people, and that we share various stories about a huge variety of topics, and it's just a great way to build this community and keep it going. So, I hope that the TEDx thing is a similar sort of thing. I guess the main difference is that our talks are longer; they're 15 minutes instead of 5 minutes. And then I'll just really quickly wind this up. So the next TEDx event we're involved with is TEDx Manchester. It'll be Sunday, the 3rd of February at Bridgewater Hall. It'll be about 2,000 people or so coming along. We've just opened ticketing up on Friday, and it's doing well. So we've got 1,200 people already registered in this past few days. We'd love if some of you came along and were part of it. We work really hard all year to make it a really special day, and that's all I've got to say. So thank you very much.
approach to all of our pictures. This half of the set is being taken over. So we've got a bit of a theme going on for the 5 talks that are remaining tonight. And the theme is around death and dying and living, but it's not as grim as you might think. So I'm going to kick off the evening with my talk, and then we're going to hear from James, who's going to talk about hydro dipping. Ruth is going to talk to us about Dada Fest. Gina about coffins with a K. And Ruth was also going to talk about coffins, and there's a real mix of themes going through these presentations. I want you to pay attention, because in the first talk that I'll be doing, I'm aiming to do a workshop over 90 seconds, so I really need you to be on the ball or you're going to miss it completely, okay? So, without further ado, I'm going to kick things off. So my name is Mandy Phillips. I'm passionate about all different kinds of things, but one of my recent passions over the last couple of years has been around death and dying. And the reason for that is that I've been studying psychotherapy and different things, and I understand that a lot of the issues that people present with when they walk into a therapist's room are all about loss. And death is such a taboo. So I want to ask you a quick question. Who here has thought about their own death? Ah, that's good. Who here is scared of dying? Okay, not bad, not bad. Okay, so what I'm going to say is that because I want to reach my full potential in life, and I want everyone else to, I want us to be able to live vigorously and beautifully in the moment. And the only way that we can do that is to not be scared of what's going to happen at the end. So why is it important? Grief is a natural part of our lives. As babies, we grieve for the comfort of the womb. We grieve as children when we lose a pet or a mum and dad. And it doesn't only relate to death, but a loss of identity too. So I'd like you to just read this. Peaceful death is really an essential human right, more essential perhaps even than the right to vote. Okay, so we're going to take a moment, 30 seconds in fact, and think about the worst possible scenario for your death. Still thinking. Well done, Dan. Okay, so you've thought about that worst possible scenario. Now I'd like to ask you a second question, and I'm expecting that slide to flip over anytime soon. So what is the best possible scenario for your death? So flip that over. If you could have any death you wanted, what would that look like? Okay, I think we've lost the countdown timer. It's okay, don't worry Dan, don't worry, it's a lot of pressure. Okay, so we've got the worst possible, we've got the best possible. I want you to think about that best possible scenario for your death, and to think about the conditions that you need to create your best death. What do you need to put in place that's not already in place to have your best death? And we'll just take 15 seconds. This is a speed workshop. 15 seconds to have a think about that. So I'm going to take a guess that you'll need to have conversations with people around you. You'll need to write your wishes down. You need to put in place all the documents to think about organ donation, that type of thing. And your next of kin, will they carry out your wishes? the context of this is that what I want to do is get into conversation around this. If you're given a terminal diagnosis at a GP or consultant, you're left to walk out of that building with no emotional or spiritual support. The role of the undertaker in the olden days were community members who would undertake to get rid of the bodies because it was a public health issue. This was a community issue. Now, it's a £4 billion business, £4 billion in 1 year. And the funeral planning industry alone is worth £3 billion, money sitting there. There's no funding for bereavement or grief counselling, and there's little or no mental health provision for complex grief. So we've got this big pot of money for the death, but nothing for the dying or the after effects. And I want to do something about that. So locally, the council is obliged to undertake to cremate people who have no families or no families willing to pay. These people are cremated, they're put in an unmarked grave, and there's no commitment from family or friends. They're not allowed to be present. There's no therapeutic value, there's no ceremony, no ritual for these people. So what I'm asking you to do is put your own house in order, talk to your loved ones about this, and if you're struggling with grief, go to a death cafe, try and get some help around these things. And what Soulful Send Off can do, which is the community interest company that I founded this year, is help with that. It's putting on grief clubs. We can offer doula services. A doula is Greek for a servant, people who sit with the dying. We can help you arrange your funeral, so it's not going to cost £4,500, which is the national average. And we can offer grief counselling. So I'm trying to put some services out there that cover that whole umbrella of dying, death, and actually living again. And I'd just like to leave you with this thought. Life is not a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a well-preserved body, but rather to skid in sideways, thoroughly worn out, and enjoying the ride. I'd like to invite James to come up and talk to us about hydro dipping.
Hi, I'm James. A bit nervous, not done this before, so first time for everything. I do custom paint and hydro dipping, and it's a process I absolutely fell in love with the moment I figured it out. There's nothing more satisfying than the ability to change anything, whether it's by adding pattern, print, and whatever you want to whatever kind of item you want. Now, we do a lot of motorcycles, we do a lot of scooters. Pretty much anything and everything can be hydro dipped. Although I wouldn't recommend the toaster. Now, hydro dipping is a process, I think came out in 82 thereabouts, but it was patented massively by the US car markets, who kind of didn't want to sort of let anyone have a go at it. Patents lapse and they expire, and hydrographic printing became quite sort of mainstream. But I've never liked just generic print thrown on a shape. I think the ability to mix and match it by adding different layers, working with airbrushes and working with so much talent, and adopting sort of old school paint techniques as well to literally give the customer whatever they want on whatever they want. Things like this, we've taken sort of a generic print, which is a leopard print, and we've actually matched it to the seat of the scooter, and you'll see more pictures of that shortly. But I've been never afraid to sort of push the boundaries and to do entire sort of bonnets. And to dip this, I actually had a cable tied to my hand just so I could keep control of the print as it fed onto it. We do a lot of gun stocks, and that's mainly where people buy cheap gun stocks, and they want to keep up with the Joneses and make it look walnut or carbon, or go for a completely different wood effect. Literally anything can be hydro printed, and there's nothing more satisfying than taking an item. It's a full paint process, so you nurture it, you prep it, you add paint, and then you add layer after layer, and yeah, to match the seats and everything almost perfectly. The customer's absolutely delighted, and it's such a good feeling and such a blessing to sort of have a grown man walk into your workshop and then walk out with something and almost see a sort of tear in his eye. Not because we've done it badly, but no, the move to the point where you take something different. This is a black wheel which we've put a hydro print on. Now I wasn't quite happy with that, so I put a blue candy in the clear coat, which totally transforms it. I think the ability to think in layers, to think differently, is such a blessing to anyone. When I started this, to know I had a good product, I went down to Bournemouth and did a hydrographics course. Within half an hour, I taught the instructor more than he could teach me, and said, well, you don't need to be here, which was a waste of a drive to Bournemouth. But we've done stuff, this is Team GB's Danielle Scott's luge board, and you know, I think bikers and people like us are pretty nuts, but to go downhill on your feet, well, feet first, on your back, on a piece of fiberglass, that's just absolutely bonkers. I get another gun stock for another Team GB shooter, which they do seem popular because everyone wants different. This is a use of masking vinyls. There's not one sticker on that bike, that's all paint. So we take the items and we, by eye, mask them and add masking vinyls, and yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, James. I do love it when we get the first timer up here. Well done, popped your Ignite cherry. And now I'd like to invite Ruth Gould, and I'm not going to introduce Ruth because I don't think I can do her justice, but she's going to give us her presentation. So please welcome Ruth.
Good evening, everybody. I'm from DataFest, and we've currently got DataFest on at the moment. For those of you who don't know what it is, it's a Disability and Deaf Arts Festival. It goes on till the 8th of December. Fantastic things. Look at the website to see the context of my course, my talk. So if you can start my talk, that'd be great. Thank you. DataFest was actually born as an organisation of disability arts led by disabled and deaf people in 1994 here in Liverpool. It's quite an exciting programme of art because it takes art from the unexpected. We call it the last avant-garde. So here's a nice quote to explain. We present art which engages people creatively to reflect our reality, our lived experience of disability. People don't often think of disabled and deaf people having their own culture, but our life experience does give us that sense of set apart. This year's festival was set in 2011, and my talk is very much talking about how your work and your life suddenly come together unexpectedly. We called it Transpire, about the spirit and the breath, and we've actually called the festival this year, What is Your Legacy? Passing because we've lost lots of great artists. Ian Stanton died 20 years ago and really pioneered a lot of the work around disability arts. Sophie's been part of our festival, died unexpectedly last year of a heart attack. An amazing woman in her early 40s who was really defying what people would see her being able to do with the art. She's working with 7-foot puppets from a wheelchair mechanism that she had. Ben Coe, been in our festival. I love this piece. It was in the Blue Coat 4 years ago. Everything is going to be okay. We live with death and dying a lot in our work. He is just an amazing guy. It's sad he's passed on. And then Mary Simpson, who was very well known in Liverpool for years, is on our board for a long, long time, also died unexpectedly. So that is part of our disability culture. It's something we have to talk about. And this is the image I wanted to use about how we pass through life. And we've got Bashaka in the room, who's actually in this picture, but wanted to go through the whole of life and the changes we have in life and how we don't want to talk about death. These are my lungs. I'm dying. I only found out in the August that my life is coming to an end. I may have a year or two, but the bucket holds, it's only a little bit of black is only a bit of healthy lung I've got. And I'm waiting to see a specialist, and it's like Mandy just said, I've been told she's got a terminal illness. I haven't seen anyone yet. I don't know what my prognosis is exactly or what's going to happen to me. I know I've got loads of benefits now. I'm getting a mobility car. So when I met Gina, and I knew she was wanting to do this coffin thing, this before I got ill, I wanted it in our festival. Who we are now, make a statement about your coffin. And we were really moving ahead. We had the oratory, that's me when I was younger, that's on my picture, on my coffin. I thought, I want my coffin designed. I'm going to die. I want to make a statement on my coffin. So I wanted to go through my life and my images, and this is one of when I was doing all my performance art. But my most important moment of my life was giving birth. This is my firstborn, Alex. You can see the umbilical cord. He's still in the process of being born. The placenta hasn't been delivered yet. That was the most amazing thing I've ever done in my life. And having my children, my daughter Alex, my daughter Harriet, my son Alex, and my youngest son Evander. They're the things I wanted on my coffin, to make a statement about my life. That's where the coffins were actually put in the oratory for the festival this year. Gina did a fantastic job doing it. James was talking about the print mechanism, which was going to go on the coffin to actually show how they would look. It didn't quite work out the way we wanted to, but it's a process. I've got a snowflower there because I love snowflowers. I wanted them to make a statement about my life because they come out after winter. We're not expecting to see beauty after all the darkness. So this is the first draft of my coffin with those images on. You can't quite see them clearly in there, but it's got the birth, it's got my young face, it's got the snowdrops, and that's it as a design. So I can make the statement about the things that are important to me, my spiritual life, my Christian walk, the fact I'm a canon of the cathedral, my miming. I got an MBE, I wasn't expecting that to go on there. The artist did it, so I'm not being a big head. But it's been amazing to be able to say, that's my life. And I've been able to put it on my coffin and make a statement about when I die. People know what was important to me, and I can really let people sing about that with me and not be sad and disappointed. I will go into life and die happy, and I know what I want to do with my plan. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ruth, MBE. Gina, how can you follow that? I'd like to invite Gina Janetsky, who's going to talk about coffin with a K. Now, she doesn't say it's coffin with a K, but I say coffin with a K, because otherwise I get confused with a curly C. So here it is, coffin.
Think you come prepared to talk about something and everything else blows you away. You no longer can feel you can talk about it. But I chose to show this slide first, and I show this because of art washing and the value of art and the value of ideas that goes unrecognised to people who are working creatively. So we kind of populate buildings, revamp them, they get sold on as luxury student housing. Meanwhile, artists are working with ideas, and it's through a quarter of a century of working on art projects that I finally come to realise that I don't actually no longer believe in just making work for the art-going public. I actually wanted to make it about and for people. And when my dad died 20 years ago, we buried him in an MDF piece of Victorian bullshit that said nothing about him. He's a survivor of a concentration camp. He had a colourful life. And I felt that that was exploitation of people's most vulnerable. And 5 years ago, a friend of mine said she'd put money behind a bar for her death, but didn't design a coffin, so I made her a big fuck-off 6x2 winged sphinx out of papier-mâché. And whilst doing that, I thought, well, this, actually, I'm not a sculptor, it wasn't that great. This should be available for everybody. So I went on a journey of trying to find a material and a process that was mass-producible so everybody could have that benefit of being able to design and make something themselves, but also it's financially proven, as well as we all know, that making something makes you feel better. If you combine all those things together, that in the most corrupt industry we probably have, where there's oligopoly, two companies that dictate, that's the sculpture I made, I'm proud of it.
A few years ago when my mum was diagnosed with cancer, within 4 weeks she was dead. This is my mum, Patricia. You know, she's not the first person. Within about 2 years, I lost 4 people, 2 of my dearest friends from suicide and 2 from cancer. And I was a kind of a doula for both my mum and my best friend. So I do have personal experience, but in that, oh, my mum and dad in Liverpool many years ago. You know, around this time, I went to a party with, I think Gina was present, and you know, she'd spoken about the coffin, the concept of the experience, of what she'd experienced when her father had died, which was some years ago. And that threw up certain questions for me. Yeah, a few of them were around the value and the exploitation, you know, around the death industry. And here's Gina. She's an innovator and a collaborator and the founder of Coffin. So some of these questions I couldn't really answer on my own. So why is the process so impersonal of the funeral industry? You know, why are people exploited when they're most vulnerable? Because I certainly couldn't cope with making choices. And what could I do to create a positive change? I was left with these questions. I didn't really have anywhere to go with them, and that's when, you know, Gina kind of came into my life and said, would you like to get involved? So in that process, I'm a big believer in collaboration and ideas and in change. So the Hegelian dialectic, a problem, a reaction, a solution. I did have a problem, I did have a reaction, but it didn't have the solution. And that's where ideas, vision and change come into my life. So I tend to try and collaborate with people who are artists, designers, innovators, and even scientists. You know, and a big component of that has to be community. So we had a procession, which was a procession of, originally it was going to be many, many coffins, which were customized and designed by local artists. And I think this was one of the first ones, which Gina's daughter created and designed. So in that process, this is at James's studio. This is one of the hydro printing. It's not a completely hydro printing, it's a little bit of customization, which I liked. In this process, I got to meet lots and lots of people. We went through the city, we went to the Blue Coat, we went to, by St. Luke's Church, we had to negotiate lots of different kind of spaces, and Ruth Gould was with us, and Steph, another girl. There were 2 women who were, you know, negotiating the landscape in a wheelchair. It threw up many conundrums to us as individuals. Oh, this is one of my particular favourites. It's a Viking longship, which is a great, beautiful image and a great way to go out. This is another one. Yeah. So anyway, we go through the city. We ended up at the Oratory, which is a mausoleum. It's St. James Cemetery, a beautiful and fitting place to visit and view them. But beyond this, I want to come back to I just want to ask anyone, does anybody recycle here? Show of hands. Does anybody want to continue to recycle and collaborate and be together? Anyone? Yeah? Because I'm just saying to you, whilst this was an artwork, oh, there's Bashar's commissioned piece. While this is an artwork, it's also a business. And we're going to go live on Kickstarter soon. So if you're interested and you know anyone, a great way to, oh, this is a procession of the blue coat. I think a great way to kind of communicate around the notion of dying and mortality is to have a discussion. You can create your own coffin, you can collaborate, innovate, get involved. You could do any design you wanted. So if you really want to get involved and collaborate and maybe open up those discussions, get involved with us at Coffin. You know, ideas at Coffin, grab Gina at the end, any of us, and you know, beyond that, go out and live your life fully. Tolstoy, Kierkegaard, the greatest philosophers of our society often say that when we are faced with death, it is then we begin to live. It shouldn't be something we're frightened of. So thanks a lot. Enjoy.
Okay, so just to give you a quick recap of tonight's events, we started with the universe and supernovas. We had a look around the bathroom, in toilets and ice baths. We talked about terminal illness, about doing death differently, and we are reminded that all of us are miracles, which is a lovely take-home, isn't it? So I would just like to emphasise Ruth's point that we should all live vigorously and beautifully, and thank you very much for your support.
When's the next event?